development of a million ideas, right? You always hear early stage ideas in startups and like they start with one thing and then they morph into something completely different. I just wanted to build something that told really authentic stories and built products to outfit those community members. And we were putting on different initiatives that seed wild oyster reefs to help improve water quality. They were like, hey, we're experimenting with kind of different sustainable and recycled yarns. Like we can combine recycled oyster shells and recycled water bottles to make a recycled filament. And then you can just turn that into yarn by blending it with kind of whatever you want. That's kind of how it's got started, just like one foot in front of the other and brick by brick.
Welcome to the Worthy for 30 podcast. I am your host, Eric Tash. Join us as we delve into the world of impactful business leaders who are setting the bar high. Worthy for 30 carefully curates its guests, engaging with business trailblazers who embody the ethos of doing good while doing well. In each episode, we extract actionable tips and wisdom from these visionaries, offering you a blueprint to merge success with social impact. Ready to elevate your business game? Let's dive in and learn how to do good while thriving. Worthy for 30, where purpose meets profit. Welcome back to another conversation and episode of the Worthy for 30 podcast. With me today is a friend of two good friends. Thank you to Mike Brown and to Jeff Raghavan for introducing me to Long Wharf founder and CEO Mike Lamagna. I'm delighted and elated to have him on the show today. Partially because I'm wearing this really cool hat, keeping the sea well. So when the conversation is over and it's up online, I will be sure to include a link to the Long Wharf Supply Co website so you can find a hat like mine or a hat like Mike's. It's very fashionable. Gotten a lot of comments, a lot of compliments so far. So and there's a bigger story here on Long Wharf Supply Co, which I'm excited to dig into. Just remember to the audience, the number 3 million. Mike and I will talk about why 3 million has a big significance for him and for his company. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Eric. Yeah, long time coming.
A long time coming. So I'd love to first, as I was getting ready for the show and also talking to you after I was introduced by Mike to you, Long Wharf Supply seems to be a culmination of a lifetime on the water. So can you talk to us about your childhood and how that gave you that initial inspiration on building a business around the marine life?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like a lot of people out there, I just spent most of my time on the water growing up with my family. I was on our family's boat 3 days after I was born, and it's never really stopped since then. Growing up, just developed, through those experiences, developed a great appreciation for historic seaports across the Northeast. Their working waterfronts and the salty communities that have helped them thrive over hundreds of years. And, once I kind of learned, I moved to New York and learned about brand building and starting businesses. And once I learned how powerful kind of authentic stories and relating to a community in an authentic way was, I was hooked, so to speak.
Okay, excellent. And what year was that? I know you were born in Massachusetts. You're now back in Massachusetts, and you came to New York City. When was that? And what was that moment where you decided, you know what, I don't want to work in corporate America anymore. I want to do something that where I can, of course, build a business, but also make an impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right after school, probably 2011, moved down to New York City, got lucky to get hired in a situation where I was working for, an entrepreneur and investor in the space. And I was nothing but a coffee runner and a copy maker early on when we still used copy machines and, really just a fly on the wall. But to see businesses being built from the ground up, that was very addicting. And I was kind of always obsessed with how ideas become reality and become businesses and the steps that are taken for that to happen. And, I kind of just looked at it. And for me, I was constantly going from New York City back up to New England where I was from, or, I would jump on a train and go out to Montauk and work on my buddy's squid boat for a couple days, to help subsidize my rent in the West Village. It's
right.
It's nothing more than just trying to kind of put one foot in front of the other and figure it out and have a little fun along the way. And I kind of looked at the market. To me, there was no one telling like these really authentic, salty stories. It's like you look at a big brand or a big corporation. It's like those guys aren't the one on the docks, like those guys aren't the one that are the restaurant owners and the fishermen and the people that really know these communities and locations better than anyone else. Maybe it's like a little secret beach or a different view of a lighthouse, but there's some nuance to the people who make up the lifeblood of these historic seaports and kind of coastal communities in a different way.
Mm-hmm. And being able to, look at the landscape and understand that, no one is authentically telling these stories of these folks who make the seaports and these coastal communities go round and round. What was that next step? Like, did you call up a buddy who was in business and say, listen, I have an idea. Let's, what was that initial step from idea? Cause you mentioned, making an idea and making it happen. What was that next step?
Yeah, I mean, I would describe it as a development of a million ideas, right? It's like you always hear early stage ideas and startups and like they start with one thing and then they morph into something completely different. And like I just wanted to build, like I said, something that told really authentic stories and built products to outfit those community members. And so I started the brand and then, I met manufacturing partners that knew we were working with different programs and we were putting on different initiatives that seed wild oyster reefs to help improve water quality. And they were like, hey, we're experimenting with kind of different sustainable and recycled yarns. Like we can combine recycled oyster shells and recycled water bottles to make a recycled filament. And then you can just turn that into yarn by blending it with kind of whatever you want, depending on what kind of garment or what properties of a garment you're trying to achieve. So it started with like, thick lamb's wool to make like a really thick fisherman's sweater. Since then, most of the line's kind of gone towards classic cotton blend for a little more breathability and utility, everyday utility, I should say. And that's kind of how it's got started, just like one foot in front of the other and brick by brick, as I said earlier.
I love it. Brick by brick, one foot in front of the other. So, and right now I see you're wearing a Long Wharf hat. Are you also wearing a Long Wharf polo?
Yeah. This is our Seawell striped knit polo. Clean, classic design. Like I said, for me, the big idea was if we can take kind of really innovative recycled materials and push the edge of textiles innovation, make clean, classic products that we know everyone will love and need, and then leverage that platform to kind of fund these water quality improvement projects. Those three pillars made up the big idea for me.
That because that's amazing. Like again, before you and I spoke, I didn't know that was possible with taking waste like water bottles and oyster shells to create yarn or create cotton. So I know from a Long Wharf Supply standpoint, that's again you're walking the walk more or less, but there's a bigger like macro, right? Like a macro implication for other fashion brands that are creating clothing. I would think.
I mean, I think the reality is the most powerful part of it is the conversation that's being had in the space, right? It's like, someone might not relate to the materials we recycle and use, but they might find other materials, or I know there's there's innovations every day coming up with other recycled materials. Some of them we're working on, some of them we're just starting to hear about. But the fact that we're able to participate in that conversation and quite frankly own it and push it to a certain degree, that's what, real progress in, you can call it the sustainability space, but, really kind of just having a mission driven platform that has a quantifiable impact on places we care about. That's really what, where the rubber meets the road for us.
Yeah, 100%. And in terms of those sustainability projects, you and I were talking before we started recording about, the Brooklyn Bridge, and, you and Jeff are part of an oyster farm out on the eastern part of Long Island.
South Fork Sea Farmers. We got to shout out those guys.
Yeah, South Fork Sea Farmers. So can you talk to, and it's not just South Fork Sea Farmers. There are a lot of different organizations that you and Long Wharf are supporting, but talk to us about those organizations and the impact that they're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And so for years we've worked with, and we're really open to any conversation. So every day we have different groups reach out to us. We reach out to different groups, and it can be anything from, hey, we have a specific project in mind. Would you like to come film it? Just, hey, we're doing something really cool and let's stay in touch, and maybe something cool comes in the future. So there's a wide spectrum how we work with these groups. But from the beginning, we've worked with really a few groups in particular. One is called the Massachusetts Oyster Project. Great friends of mine up here in Massachusetts that not only seed wild oyster reefs as part of their program, but they also restarted and fund the entire Cape Cod shell recycling program, which started with 7 or 8 restaurants donating all their shell, and has grown to 22 or 23 participating locations this year. A lot of that shell will sit in Wellfleet and dry out for a year, and then go to the town shellfish constables or the local oyster farmers, from which they'll disperse in the harbor so that other shellfish and oysters and stuff can grow on top of them. They also build upwellers in a number of locations like Gloucester, Marblehead, Hyannis, Nantucket, where baby oysters will be incubated for a year, while they grow big enough to actually be seeded in these harbors and riverways. So that's a really cool program. Obviously, Jeff started the South Fork Sea Farmers in partnership with the East Hampton Shellfish Association out on the eastern end of Long Island. Some of my best friends are from the town of Montauk and have shown me over the years such a beautiful place from the water, a true working waterfront, and a place where fishing and sustainable fisheries has been the lifeblood of a specific location for generations. So Jeff and those guys do a lot of work out there. Not only do they do community oyster gardening and get local families involved in being by the water, being in their harbors, and taking ownership of the water quality in their neighborhoods, basically. But they support the East Hampton Shellfish Hatchery, which does a number of different initiatives related to getting shellfish in the water, making sure shellfish have a healthy place within that community, and really educating everyone on how beneficial it is to be conscious and participate in the maintaining healthy inshore ecosystems. I've also worked with the Nantucket Shellfish Association for years. They are very involved in making sure eelgrass populations, bay scallop populations, and local oyster farmers are all supported on the island and have a voice in such a special location. And then our partners at Billion Oyster Project, who recognized as the global leader in this concept of reseeding wild oyster reefs to help improve water quality. They have a goal of seeding New York Harbor with 1 billion oysters by 2035. And they're well on their way. And they've basically just pushed the initiatives of seeding the East River and a bunch of locations where they've worked since 2014. And since then, they've seen humpback whales come back to the Hudson River. They've seen pods of dolphin come back to the East River. And this month, in a couple of weeks, we're really excited to go down and seed a brand new reef below the Brooklyn Bridge. So New York's such a special place where it is an international capital of the world. And they argue that 99.99% of New Yorkers or people who walk by these rivers don't understand that an oyster can live in it and be so beneficial to improve its water quality. So to kind of be down there and see the work they're doing and the way they're educating the public and partnering with local school systems is pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm. And that is amazing. You know, all these different organizations, you know, helping, make the local marine life, better, cleaner. And I saw a stat, and please, help clarify. By seeding one oyster, how many gallons of water does that oyster filter per day?
A healthy adult oyster can filter up to 50 gallons of seawater every single day. So you start doing the math, and you realize these cluster reefs live in numbers of thousands or tens of thousands eventually, up to millions. Tens of millions. We just talked about 1 billion. I mean, right. You're talking about not only from the standpoint of naturally regulating and filtering these waterways, but they also have help with, erosion and storm surge, and they shelter baby marine life like baby crabs and fish and seahorse and all kinds of stuff that make up the bottom of the food pyramid. So it's a pretty incredible way they benefit these waterways and something that really needs to take part in every harbor across the world. And it's starting to. We get outreach from, Florida and the Carolinas and Alabama. And we've had friends on the West Coast we've gone to visit because they're doing such cool work with oyster farms and seeding wild oyster reefs. And it's such a cool initiative. And people just look at an oyster on a plate and they don't realize, how impactful that thing is behind the scenes.
Right. It's like the I want to say, instead of calling it the butterfly effect, it's the oyster effect because of all those things that it can impact and improve. Right. Because yes, it's making the water cleaner and more habitable for other marine life to flourish and to thrive. But there's also an economic impact too, right? Are there budding industries coming about because of the fact that these waterways are cleaner now because of all the oyster seeding?
Yeah. I mean, ask any sport fisherman on earth, ask anyone who does a boat tour or a jet ski tour, or just think about the local restaurants serving sustainable seafood. You want to know that the shrimp, the crab, the fish, the oysters, the mussels, the lobster, you name it, come from as clean of a place as possible, and it's even, I hate to say it gets as basic as being swimmable. I mean, you can go online and Google in 2024 how many harbors and beaches have been shut down because of bacteria levels. And once people start hearing a lot of that stuff, I hate to say it, is kind of swept under the rug because of the way it impacts tourism. People don't think we have those problems because it's 2024. And it's incredible at how big of an issue water quality is.
Oh, absolutely. I was down in northern Florida, like the Tampa Gulf area. And I know that area gets hit with red tide.
Severely impacted. Yeah. And that's exactly what oysters help prevent. So they actually end up eating the algae blooms. That's what they feed on. And they naturally regulate those nutrients that are in the water. And red tide is an effect of too heavy of an algae bloom. And that's what causes that. It causes fish kills, causes all kinds of issues to spiral out of control. And that's a direct effect that oysters can have on communities like that.
And in terms of your conversations with organizations down in Florida, have those progressed to a place where you can help support?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a really cool organization called the Tampa Bay Watch. We haven't gotten anything material done with them yet. I mean, we'll help tomorrow if they need it, but I've just followed along with their progress for a while now. And it's like I said, every harbor at least up and down the East Coast should have one of these programs, hopefully in my lifetime. Mm-hmm. But the way that the support that the oyster community and the kind of inshore ecosystems are getting from people actually being educated on how beneficial they are for the waterways that they love, that's where we're seeing kind of eyes open and people get to a point where they say, yeah, like we can get behind this 1,000%,
Oh, right. Yeah. It's like brick by brick, like oyster by oyster, right? It's like you have to educate to get them to open their eyes on that impact of, seeding an oyster.
Oyster by oyster. I love it.
Oyster by oyster. That's what it sounds like. Cause, going back to the billion oyster project, up in New York City, you said that there's a partnership or a collaboration with New York City Public Schools.
Yeah. So they actually run what's called the New York Harbor School. Mm-hmm. And they regularly take kids out on the water. They have them maintain the oyster reefs. They bring up, they have several research stations up and down kind of the shoreline around Dumbo. And they pull up, oyster reefs, which are essentially in cages that mm-hmm. they call these research stations. And they see, we've pulled up shrimp. They've pulled up seahorses. They pull up baby fish, and these kids for the first time see that something lives in the water that is central to their community that they walk by every day, and they care a little bit more about where they are or where they throw their plastic water bottle or, a wrapper that they might drop, So it's one of those things where they have like a direct relationship and interaction with their environment. And that's the first step to anyone caring about, the places that they're around and then the environments that they're impacting.
No, absolutely. And seeing that impact and participating in that impact and contributing to that impact. And then what happens, again, oyster by oyster, it's, hey, Jimmy, guess what I did today in school? Like, oh my God, that's amazing. And guess what? It's in our backyards. Like we can do this tomorrow. This is like this impact we can make tomorrow. And it's, cause like, New York City, not to pick on New York City, yes, like Manhattan is an island, but as you mentioned, sometimes or most New Yorkers don't have peripheral vision and really understanding, the waterways that surround the island. So, these initiatives, especially through the Billion Oyster Project, is helping again, bridge that education gap by again, demonstrating that impact.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're bringing it back. Manhattan was built on oyster shells. I mean, the oyster industry, they were the oyster capital of the world there for a little while. And the oyster houses lined the south end of Manhattan. And, it's fun to see such a admirable organization really get their hands dirty and commit themselves to such a cool mission.
Yeah, absolutely. And when was Manhattan like the oyster capital of the world? That's I did not know that.
I think it was like the 1800s, early 1900s.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So now when you go to a restaurant on the East Coast, again you're not. I imagine they're not saying these oysters are coming from the New York Harbor. They're coming from other places along the East Coast and. I know oysters also on the West Coast. So yeah, it'll be super interesting again to see that impact, to see that evolution of the harbor. In terms of Long Wharf's evolution, as a clothing brand, as a hat brand, what are some of the items on the roadmap that you're able to disclose?
We're always looking at cool developments, right? So, it started with thick fisherman sweaters. We were lucky enough to create the first fisherman sweaters made from soft blend of recycled oyster shells, recycled water bottles, and cotton. Started with like really thick classic pieces. We've developed to, thinner, soft, sustainable knitwear as we describe it. Polos, Henley t-shirts. We've developed knit dresses for ladies. We just started showing next year's spring summer stuff with swimwear, and we developed a linen blend that we're really excited to introduce. hoping to do outerwear at some point. So the limit on the products and really cool pieces that people kind of know, love, and need is so far it's limitless. And that's what gets us up out of bed in the morning and gets us excited to go to work, is just knowing that there's so much creative and innovative ideas that we can bring to life.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of like those ideas, I imagine you have, great manufacturer partners, but in terms of your consumers, like, are you talking to your consumers on a regular basis to get their feedback on what they like to see from Long Wharf Supply?
Yeah, all the time, whether it's our direct consumers in our stores and our pop-ups, or, the independent retailers that carry us. We're always asking what the feedback's like. What are people saying? What do people like? What colors do they like? What are they buying? What do they want to see next? Can we do something a little more sustainable, a little more innovative? That's kind of what we let drive our product development in the direction of our line, as well as just stuff that I like. Like, I'm very much inspired by kind of like, not only fishing from a historic standpoint, and whether you were a lobster fisherman in the 80s, or, we do a lot of tuna fishing now, fishing for striped bass up here. There's always been a certain utility to the garments we make because of that inspiration. So that's kind of what we let drive the ship.
No, that's great. That's super interesting. And from a sustainability standpoint, the feedback they've gotten is like, how can you make it more sustainable? Like, have consumers given you that feedback on Long Wharf? I love buying your stuff because of all the great organizations and the great efforts you're making to make marine life better and the waterways better.
Yeah, I mean, that's what's really rewarding about meeting our customers in real life, is a lot of them tell us that, like, yeah, we were drawn to your story, or we wanted to support your mission. And then they get the piece and they're like, that was all cool and that was all nice, but really this is just a sweater we love to wear every day. And that's what's most important to me is, we're very much inspired from a time where people bought stuff to use, not to sit on the shelf. They bought an extra layer for the boat, and we want people to develop a relationship with the garments we produce. We want it to be that kind of old fisherman's sweater that we used to pull out of dad's closet and wear on the boat or on the beach when it got cool at night. And when people kind of begin having a relationship with our garments, they end up supporting our new developments, and they end up coming back and they feel like they're a part of the brand and a part of our community. And that's the most, that's the most rewarding piece of, building a brand, so to speak.
Right. No, I love the storytelling. I love the nostalgia of like, okay, this sweater that I'm wearing from Long Wharf reminds me of the one that I pulled out of my dad's closet. And, when it got cool at night, and I'm like, holy shit, like I need to now buy a Long Wharf sweater. Cause like, what memory is going to pop up in my head, cause that's amazing how you're able to, again, tie those dots, for the consumers. And it's a great piece. It's sustainable. It's comfortable. It's that utility. Right? It's that utility. It's not just, I bought it because it looks nice. I bought it because it keeps me warm at night, or keeps me protected from the sun. And at the same time, oh my goodness, like, let me tell you about Long Wharf Supply and why I wear this hat. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's the coolest piece. And like, even opening our store on Nantucket this summer, it's like people come in every day like, oh, I bought this for my boyfriend and he's obsessed with it. Or like, my dad got me this for Christmas and, I wear it every day. Or, I got my friend this for their birthday. And they're just, like I said, they're developing a relationship with the brand and the product in such a cool, like, everyday, authentic way. And we have no like professional design expertise, or, we've not worked in some big corporate environment. It's like really just listening to our community and our friends and our family and the customers we do have. And that's kind of our North Star, because we don't know anything else,
I love it. I love it because what am I thinking of? It's like the North Star. It's the mission. It's utility. It's giving the customers what they want or what they expect from the Long Wharf brand. And it's, again, it's really helping fuel that fire, to continue on and to evolve the brand, to continue to make products, that provide, consumers, again, what they want or what they expect from Long Wharf. But what's really interesting based on everything that you've talked about, Mike, over this conversation, is, you go on social media. Well, again, I'm talking about you. I'm actually talking about me. I go on social media. There are articles, brand loyalty is dead. There's no brand loyalty anymore. There's so much fragmentation, blah, 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 blah. But what you're saying is that there is brand loyalty when you're able to tap into the emotion, when you're able to help tell a story, where you're able to tie that story to a mission and to utility. And again, if you're able to check these boxes, then those consumers will not only come back, but they will advocate and speak highly about your brand. Would that be
well, they develop a relationship with it and they feel like they're a part of it. The coolest interaction I have is someone who in 2020 supported our Kickstarter. Like they bought a piece because they thought it was a cool idea. Here we are now with, 1,400 different SKUs and a spring summer line and a store on Nantucket. And like, it's because of them and they feel a part of that. So when they show up, they almost have a greater appreciation for it than I do.
That is amazing. Again, 2020 pandemic, Kickstarter, fast forward to now to 2024. That's amazing just to see that, have those consumers see the evolution of the brand and being along for the ride. Mike, this has been a great conversation. For the folks who are interested in learning more about you, Long Wharf Supply, where should they go?
Yeah, just go to longwharfsupply.com or obviously follow us on Instagram at Long Wharf Supply. I mean, sign up for our newsletter. We really try and keep it pretty cool and tell really authentic stories, from our community and provide a little eye candy every now and then. So just trying to have a good time and build something that's kind of benefits the communities we care most about. And we love hearing from our customers and meeting them and developing new relationships. So, we're always happy to meet new people and hear from them. So like I said, please check out the site. And we're always open to having new conversations.
There you go. Okay. So I'll include the link to the Long Wharf website and the Instagram handle in the show notes when I post this conversation. Mike, it's been a pleasure. I really do appreciate your time telling the Long Wharf story, telling your story, which again is part and parcel of the success of the business and the continued success moving forward. So thank you again.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you for joining this episode of the Worthy for 30 podcast. Stay tuned for more insights from impactful business leaders. Don't miss out. Follow us on all podcast platforms to catch every conversation.